So now that we've had the Breakaway 24/7 playlist for a while, I wanted to talk about the map rework and my thoughts on it. I don't want to beat around the bush with this one. Of the reworked maps, this is definitely the least fun I've had playing. Like, I really don't enjoy playing on this map, and it's one I will likely try to skip anytime it comes up in the regular rotation, at least when I play alone, which is usually all the time. But that doesn't mean this is a bad map, so let me explain a little further. The rework did a lot to shrink the size and make the map a little more traversable and action more plentiful. It's a resounding success in that regard, and from a visual perspective, all the graphical improvements are noticeable, and Breakaway is really a pleasure to look at, especially when the tank explosions occur. However, I think the identity of Breakaway as a map where vehicles feast on infantry is still present. For me, as someone who plays infantry almost exclusively, I feel forced to play either engineer to fight the enemy vehicles and support my allied vehicles, or recon so I can just pick off enemies with some measure of safety. I don't know if I just haven't had enough time on the map to really learn the flow, but anytime I play assault or medic and try to play the objective, I get absolutely eaten alive by all the vehicles. To me, the oil rig feels like a really fulfilling place to find boots on the ground combat, but even that's often spoiled by the roving air support farming kills. And if one team already controls that oil rig, my experience has generally been that it's nearly impossible to get anywhere near it in order to have some of those fun gunfights. The defending team will typically have no difficulty at all dispatching enemies on the ice below with its nearly non-existent cover, or just gunning down anyone trying to attack by way of the zip lines. I don't think this is necessarily a bad thing though. Battlefield 2042 feels like one of the most infantry-favored titles in the franchise, and many maps definitely skew heavily toward that infantry combat, or at least have huge parts of them that are really well protected from vehicles. Stranded is an easy example of a map that feels like infantry is the only real way to play, and even a map like Exposure, while it has areas where vehicles can be powerful, generally sees the bulk of players in the middle tier of the map, where vehicles have very limited access and impact without being quickly dispatched. So with that, I don't actually mind that Breakaway is a vehicle-focused map. Vehicles are an integral part of the Battlefield experience, and those players need to have a few maps that favor them as well. If I had very communicative squads, or if I had a group of friends that regularly played Battlefield, I'd probably enjoy this map a lot more by just leaning more towards squad and vehicle play. But as a primarily solo player, usually my impact will generally be at its best in an infantry role, and on Breakaway I'm generally just relegated to shooting rockets at tanks and helicopters, or being the sniper taking pot shots from hundreds of meters away, playstyle that I typically despise seeing. So overall, I think your opinion of the map will depend greatly on the type of player you are. If you're someone who really utilizes the vehicle portion of Battlefield, you'll probably have a blast. If you're a boots on the ground running gun player, you'll probably find the gameplay tedious and frustrating. Honestly, I think this is an intentional move, not just to give vehicle players a map where they have an advantage, but also to force players to play other classes. Engineer is not typically a class I play, but being on Breakaway forces me into it if I want to make a dent in the enemy vehicle presence. There could be some merit there, forcing players out of their typical comfort zones to explore more of what the game has to offer, but whether or not you enjoy that is up to you. In many ways, I suspect the Hourglass rework will be similar, as it has a lot of the same issues in terms of its barren landscape, though that map at least has the stadium as a mostly enclosed point of interest dominated by infantry fights. If I were to make some kind of suggestion to improve Breakaway for infantry players, it would just be to somehow make the oil rig more accessible and not so easily defensible, and maybe give some kind of overhead cover so that one sweep from enemy air support isn't so oppressive. This way, the map could be slightly more dynamic. These are just my initial impressions though. Time and balance changes will definitely determine the experience in the long term as players adjust and figure out the best ways to approach conquest. So we'll see how that shakes out down the line. That does it for my thoughts though, and I want to hear from all of you. Have you had a chance to play Breakaway? What do you think of it? And do you think 2042 is generally more infantry favored than previous Battlefield games? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to talk to you all about it. With that, leave a like or a dislike, and I'll see you all in the next video.